Yes, excellent.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, I would like to thank all the panelists for joining this panel. And I would like to put the first question to Professor Johnny. Professor Jiang is a member of the CPPCC, and he is currently a chairman of Oriental Payment Group Holdings Limited and an INED of Trans-China Investments. He's also an adjunct professor in the Department of Industrial and System Engineering of the Hong Kong Polytechnic University.
Thank you.
The first question is, Johnny, how has ESG been taken in Hong Kong? And do people really appreciate the background?
Thank you, Anthony. Hi, everyone in the network. Regarding these questions, I think I have some background information to share with all of us. There are two background elements that drive the development of ESG. First is the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the United Nations in 2015 and the Paris Agreement in December the same year. By 2020, Paris Agreements united 194 states plus the European Union to work together to limit the impact of climate change. By 2050, contain global warming within 1.5 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. Climate change presents a global systematic risk to society. It threatens the basic elements of life for all people: access to water, food production, health, use of land, and physical and natural capital. It is a long, diversible risk. It impacts everyone on this planet. Therefore, all should work together before the destruction becomes irreversible. From 2017 to 2019 alone, climate change-related natural disaster reached $640 billion according to TCFD. ESG is primarily related to corporations and industries in their business strategy setting and operations to fetch interest from multiple stakeholders, including government, customers, business partner, public interest, creditor, employees, and communities, plus investors. As a result of country-level commitments, reporting on how they operate in such a way is absolutely critical in the context of climate change and sustainable development goals. There are many legislative changes in light of climate change and ESG movement. Corporations and individuals should be more vigilant and get ready to adapt if not needing the required change. Hope I can answer the questions, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Johnny. We will come back to you for more questions. And I would like to put the next question to Dr. Terence Chen. Dr. Chen is deeply involved in industry development and the social service, and is the committee chair of ESG and Sustainable Investment Committee of Hong Kong Independent Non-Executive Director Association. He's also a member of the Risk Committee of the SFC, a member of the Mainland Opportunity Committee of Financial Service Development Council, and a member of the Hong Kong Baptist University Council and the Foundation. The question I'm going to put to Dr. Terence Chen is, how can INED add values to the management of ESG issues of the companies in order to enhance ESG performance?
Thank you, Anthony, and dear folks. I think INED can suggest establishing some ESG committee to report to the board of directors, establishment of a robust ESG governance structures can ensure the enterprise have appropriate and effective ESG reporting procedures for risk management and internal control. Also, the board of directors of company can set up ESG working group in accordance with its own management structure, formulate long-term and effective ESG governance policies, set feasible ESG objectives, and integrate sustainable development policy into their daily operations. Moreover, INED can look for the appropriate resource for performance of duties, including training, employees, and external consultants or experts. Nevertheless, INED can also participate in the board to do some internal stakeholder engagement, offer their expertise to identify key ESG issues, which is material to the company's operation. This would help the company to prioritize this issue in their ESG strategies. Here, INED should also keep pace with the times and learn how to drive the board to discuss issues such as improving the level of governance or some risks related to climate change. INED also need to balance the performance and compliance, understand the importance of ESG reporting, shareholder interests, as well as institutional investors' attention. Continual education and institutional training can help the INED to perform its duty more effectively. Finally, how to find some support from external consulting engines is another very good source of improvements. Stock exchange now have increasing the strict requirement on ESG information disclosure of listed companies, such as MSCI, Dow Jones SI, and other ESG different rating index, increasing concern on the capital market and investors. A lot of ESG professional organizations use this measurement index and model to improve the report content and ensure professionalism and integrity of information disclosure. I think all this should help to add value of the company's ESG issue based on the INED contributions. Thank you, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Dr. Terence Chen. The next question I would like to put to Ms. Gloria So. Gloria has around 18 years of experience in financial advisory, especially the ESG consultation. Gloria has provided ESG-related advisory service for over 60 listed companies. Gloria, I would like to put these questions to you. What is the latest ESG trend in Hong Kong? Do clients see the ESG trend as a challenging task?
Thanks, Anthony. Well, actually, we are stepping up in terms of the disclosure of ESG content and the quality. And of course, the Hong Kong Exchange is leading the trend, whether the importance of the ESG disclosure and in-depth information to provide a much more transparent information to the public. So as of the latest update of our ESG guide, we noticed that we need to disclose a mandatory disclosure on the involvement of the board of directors. And of course, we need to have a lot of disclosure on those quantitative informations like KPIs in emissions or in those social data. Therefore, we noticed that it is an increasing importance. There are increasing importance on the no matter in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange or the regulators on the ESG disclosure trend. SIIS provides a lot of ESG consulting service for around 100 listed companies in Hong Kong and mainland China. And we noticed that some of the companies, if they do not have a well-established ESG structure, they are difficult to collect those kind of data and make a proper and accurate disclosure. But a lot of clients is already working very hard on this kind of ESG disclosure, and they are looking for solutions to enhance their information's quality, and as well as to helping them to setting some realistic targets in the futures. So, but no matter how, I think it is a challenge to our listed companies on the ESG trend in Hong Kong. If the listed company has not yet started their work, I recommend them to start it as soon as possible. But from our experience, Hong Kong listed company is quite flexible, and they could adopt changes once when the guide become effective. Last but not least, in the past, we noticed that the Hong Kong Exchange issued a new consultation on ESG matters for every 3 to 4 years. So it is expected that another upgrade may be coming soon after the settlement of this new ESG guide in this year. Thanks, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Gloria. The next question I would like to put to Ms. Sarah Golden. Sarah Sarah is the CEO of Impact Investing Institute. Before Sarah was appointed the CEO of the Impact Investing Institute in July 2019, she was business editor at the Financial Times, where she worked for 18 years. And prior to working at the Financial Times, Sarah worked in emerging markets fund management for Citigroup's asset management. Sarah, I would like to put this question to you. How does impact investing addressing climate change?
Thank you very much, Anthony, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. It's been an incredibly difficult year, the last 12 months for everyone, but there are some positive things from last year, one of which is that I think without the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to be joining you on a conference like this from the southwest of England, where I live, and run the UK's Impact Investing Institute, as you said, Anthony. We were launched in November 2019, and we have a very strong and foundational belief that environmental outcomes and the transition to a net zero carbon world must be considered in conjunction with social outcomes and with the need to mitigate that transition, the effects of that transition on people and communities, and also seize the opportunities, the many opportunities that that transition to net zero presents. One of the things that we've been working on very closely at the Institute is the concept of a just transition. The just transition means one where, as you make the transition to net zero, you also take actions to, particularly around jobs and skills and social renewal, that speak to that transition. And I think this is going to be a very important theme in the UK this year, because the government is hosting COP26 in November, the most important climate conference, as you'll all be aware. And what we believe, some of the commitments and some of the work that's going into COP26 are really extremely innovative, and there are very new and dynamic ways of thinking about how to bring private sector capital to bear to address the environmental challenges that we face. If we think about some of the examples of how impact investment can address the transition to net zero, you don't just have the ability to invest in solutions to the growing climate crisis. So that might be in renewable energy, precision agriculture, in waste management, in carbon capture technology, low carbon transportation. But you can also align your social and environmental impact. So if a transition to a low carbon economy is to be sustainable, we must also ensure that it is accompanied by investment in reskilling and education to address both the immediate unemployment and economic fallout from the pandemic, as well as the structural shifts from decarbonisation. And it's really incredibly important to deliver systemic change to address the climate crisis. This must be a joint private and public exercise. We need to get better at mobilising private sector capital at scale to address social and environmental challenges. Thank you very much, Anthony. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. We will come back to you for more questions later. The next question I'm going to put to Mr. Dixon Peck. Dixon is the Senior Associate of Green Council. And the question is, well, how NGOs are helping to drive ESG corporates? Dixon?
Thank you, Anthony. First of all, I'd like to thank SIIP for the opportunity for Green Council to share some insights. I think there's like two types of NGOs that can drive ESG, which are both pretty unique and pretty much needed. One of them is the advocacy group, such as like Greenpeace. They drive change for the environment side of the ESG, the environment side, through advocacy. So like very hard actions. The other is like kind of where Green Council sits, since we're an NGO as well, where we drive stuff behind the scenes. So we use our expertise and our vast range of network, including government, scientists, and subject matter experts, to help corporates drive ESG to the business agenda. Let me give you an example. So NGOs are one of the few organizations, parties that can join the United Nations Environment Program. Or another example is UNFCCC as a listed accreditation organization, where they can sit through major meetings. For example, for the UN Environment Assembly, which is going to happen the next month virtually, the topic is about strengthening actions for nature to achieve the sustainable development goals. So member states such as Green Council and other stakeholders will have a platform to share and implement successful approaches that contributes to achievement to the environmental dimensions of the 2030 Agenda, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, relating to sustainable patterns of consumption and production and poverty. I can see how NGOs like Green Council can use this platform to learn what other corporations are doing around the world, including the latest trends such as SDGs, to drive changes back to the ESG scenes here locally, because we see a lot of companies starting to use SDGs to promote their ESG agendas. Well, another example is some NGOs are releasing a set of tool sets to help achieve global policy goals. For example, an NGO called Carbon Disclosure Project, CDG, has developed a program along with some other NGOs such as WWF called Science-Based Targets for corporates as a way to commit to reduction of greenhouse gas emissions using science-based methodologies as a way to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, which is to limit the global warming temperature below 2 degrees pre-industrial levels, or pursues the limit warming to 1.5 degrees. So companies use these kind of tool sets to push their ESG agenda, which I see how NGOs can really help. On the flip side, a lot of corporates, they just automatically kind of want to push their own 2030 agenda. And a lot of the times they would partner with NGOs themselves, that they would find an NGO to achieve their own ESG agenda. And so on specific topics they're working on. So that's how I feel like NGOs can help corporates to drive their ESG. Thank you, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Dixon. Okay, I'll come back to the question to Professor Zhang Ling. Well, what are the issues you have observed on ESG reporting in Hong Kong?
Thank you, Anthony. My answer is welcome the new ESG disclosure regulations from Hong Kong Exchange in 2019 and look forward to seeing better reports from the listed company based on the revised regulations. However, there are a few concerning issues in Hong Kong. First of all, not all listed companies report on ESG matters, despite that is mandatory. Second, the content of the most reports make quantitative measurements and practical targets that explain in clear context and track over time. This is mostly criticized by investors because a lot of reports contains massive information, but there is no explanation whether they will use the same criteria to collect and disclose on year-on-year basis. Thirdly, corporations talk about good things more than challenges and transitions. A lot of reports remains in the style of CSR report. From an ESG angle, many are deemed to be greenwashing, then insightful data for decision making for stakeholders, including investors, obviously. And then education to the issuer is needed, particularly independent law legislative director, ASIAiNED. They should need the board to understand the new regulations and ensure overseas are in place for climate change risk to their own business, including customer behavior, supply chain, cost and sustainability impact are assessed and migrated on any ongoing basis. Last but not least, corporations should seek specialists to help them producing professional reports. The audit firm are typically chosen in such role, but in my view, corporations should also seek consulting specialists who could bring out the strategies, accurately compelling decision narrative to produce high quality reports with useful qualitative and quantitative substance. Thanks, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Johnny. Dr. Terence Chen, I would like to put these questions to you again. Well, many companies, particularly the smaller and more medium-sized companies, are still not paying close attention to their ESG performance, usually because of the lack of leadership, especially at the board level. How can we solve this problem?
I think the most important thing is to make the boardroom understand the meaning of ESG is to strike a balance between the business value and social responsibility. So an excellent enterprise should not only have good business growth, but also have sustainable development vision and potential. ESG is a good frame of thinking which can help the company to examine their own brand positioning, strategic directions, business model, product form, and so on from a higher perspective. Therefore, ESG will not hinder business development, but will promote the value of enterprise. If this is the case, ESG can create value for the company. And going expectation, we need to explain going expectation from investors, customer, employees who are looking for ESG performance of a company to determine their long-term sustainable development of its operations. In addition to regulatory environment is evolving with more stringent compliance requirements, policy to fulfill the carbon zero target, the company can enhance compliance readiness by adopting ESG best practice. And also a lot of the misunderstanding between large company and small companies relevant to the ESG topic because of the economic foundations. However, developing a successful company is closely related to the long-term strategic framework and a win-win and mutual benefit thinking. What small companies need to think in their development is to have a strategic mind and also to change their thinking to adopt the ESG initiatives. Recommending the board members to join more ESG industries seminar and do more sharings with the investors, it will encourage them to adopt more ESG technical policies and action plans. It's better if the INED can do more engagement during this process. This is what I recommend the solution to solve this problem. Thank you, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Dr. Terence Chen. Gloria, I'd like to put these questions to you. How can investors better evaluate the ESG performance of companies before making investment decisions?
We understand that judging a company's ESG performance is solely based on the ESG report without benchmarking with their industry could be quite difficult. Especially, we do not have a quite standard reporting scope and calculation standard for a investor or a person who do not really understand ESG matters may be quite difficult when they comparing this kind of information. So we suggest them to rely on some kind of rating system like MSCI rating system or the Carbon Disclosure Projects. This kind of rating organization, they have a lot of rating information for the public when they try to have their investment. For example, the MSCI rating scheme, they score the ESG performance based on the company's disclosure, their public information, but not just their ESG report, which they also rank the company by those kind of public disclosure, like the regulatory or any disciplinary actions to that company. So together with this kind of information, they will benchmarking against the industry peers and ultimately provide an insight on an overall ESG performance. SIIS has some experience in helping some listed company to improve their their MSCI rating and ESG rating. And we found that the rating system is quite sophisticated and covered all around environmental, social, and governance matters, which leads to a rather comparable standard for the investor reference. So, of course, we also found that if we upgrade our clients the ESG rating, this create a higher investment value, which will attract much more potential investment funds. Thanks, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Gloria. I will put this question to Sarah again. Well, Sarah, is divestment the right thing to do for investors?
Thank you, Anthony. It's a very important question. If I may, just before I answer that, if I may just reflect on some of the points that, the good points that Gloria and Dixon made. One of the challenges for all businesses and for all investors is that at the moment there are no globally agreed standards for measuring, reporting and managing impact and ESG. And what you've seen recently in the last year is some really exciting and important developments internationally with the Carbon Disclosure Project that Dixon mentioned and others, including the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board and the Global Reporting Initiative, coming together to commit to convergence of global sustainability standards. And this is really, it's an incredibly important development. And I think it's going to really drive forward the ability both for businesses to measure their sustainability performance and their impact, both positive and negative, and also for investors to be able to hold businesses to account for their sustainability performance and their impact, whether positive or negative. And this is a very important dimension of the question that you asked me around divestment, which is it's a complicated one. It is there is no doubt that divestment has played an extremely important role in putting pressure on companies, foundations, endowments, organizations to really reflect very thoughtfully and very constructively on their portfolio holdings. So, for example, in the UK, we've had various university endowments, for example, at Oxford and Cambridge, committing to divest from fossil fuels as a result of pressure brought to bear on them by mainly students. And as we know, the younger generation has an extremely powerful and should have an extremely powerful voice on this issue. However, the problem with divesting from public listed companies is that other investors take your place, and it can actually reduce future pressure on companies to change their practices. Apart from anything else, if everyone divested from fossil fuel companies now, we would see the lights go out and more electricity, power cuts, more hardship, particularly for people in the poorer and more disadvantaged regions and countries of the world. So we believe that rather than divestment, active, positive engagement is the answer. And that engagement is necessary to drive real cultural and operational change, both at businesses and among investors. And investors have an incredibly important role to play in this. And we've seen some global investors, asset managers, such as BlackRock, take a really very proactive stance on what they believe their investee companies should be doing with regards to sustainability. I think that momentum is only growing. I think it will get stronger. It's being driven also by policy and regulatory developments. And we believe that that is the most effective and long-term way to effect genuine change. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. It seems that a lot of things that investors should pay attention to, Again, Professor Jiang, I would like to put these questions to you. What should investors pay attention to when considering investing in green finance projects?
To put into their
Johnny, we can't hear you, Johnny.
Please unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, you can start again. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. This can put a very simple answer to these questions. Given the project benefits, the environmental or society, the returns in line with or below a little bit market levels are generally acceptable. Because in terms of, in addition to the returns, the positive environmental and social impact should be taken into account. So I think the investor can take more attention to those intangible factors for making the investment decisions. Yeah, this is the answer.
Well, thank you, Johnny. Dr. Terence Chen, the questions to you. How can companies get their INED involved in the management of ESG issues of the companies?
Anthony. INED is of should have a more high-level oversight role for the ESG affairs in the board. Participating in ESG management team may be too detailed work for them, but so I think participating in ESG committee on board level should providing steering directions, and also an independent nature of INED could provide fresh pairs of eyes to review the company's ESG information and offer their objective comments and opinions. Usually, the questions raised by INED would be helpful for company's own team to identify some blind spots, such as the internal some company matters, which is not clearly to the external audience in the ESG disclosure. And board members should participate in ESG affairs as soon as possible. It could help to integrate this in their strategy formulations and decision making. And board members should take leading role and accountability in ESG in effective compliance disclosure of the companies. I think this is what INED could involve in management ESG issues in the companies. Thanks, Anthony.
Well, thank you, Dr. Terence Chen. The next question, I'd like to have Sarah to answer again. What is greenwashing? The term we heard many times, and how can it be prevented?
Thank you, Anthony. I mean, it's a very important question, and one that I think also is directly linked to some of the points we've all been discussing earlier around the need for transparency and clear reporting standards. Greenwashing is where companies or organizations, or indeed investors, engage in marketing or public relations strategies where they appear to be aligned with ESG objectives, but actually they're not reaching or even targeting those objectives in a meaningful way. And what we need to both to identify and to prevent greenwashing is, first of all, we need transparency and accountability. And second, we need an enabling policy and regulatory environment, both nationally in national jurisdictions, but also internationally. I think that, you know, there's some very encouraging progress being made, as I mentioned earlier, around international convergence of sustainability standards for measuring and reporting on ESG performance. But I think and a number of regulatory developments. But the bottom line is that we need a robust global reporting system that integrates financial reporting with sustainability reporting. I mean, we believe that factors which even as recently as a couple of years ago were considered not material to financial performance. So, for example, if you pollute the environment in which you operate, these are now increasingly becoming financially material, and that organizations should be reporting on those ESG factors, not as a risk mitigation and not because it's the right thing to do, although it is, but because these are financially material to a company's future performance and profit streams. The only companies that are going to be able to deliver future profit streams are those which will be delivering genuinely sustainable profit streams. And so we need a reporting system and a regulatory system that supports that. And that will really avoid the potential for greenwashing, and not just greenwashing, but what we also call social washing, the ability of companies or investors to assert that they're taking actions for social or environmental outcomes, which in fact they aren't. We've responded to the IFRS's foundation consultation on sustainability, creating a global sustainability standards board. And I would urge your audience to look at our website, which is impactinvest.org.uk, where there's a lot more detail on this and other initiatives we're involved in around these important issues. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sarah. I think we might have time for the last question. I would like to put this question to Dr. Terence Chen again. Well, how should the management balance the company's business growth and the ESG development, given that both share similar resources? Dr. Terence Chen? Terence, we can't hear you. I think you need to...
Sorry, yeah, okay, nowadays more and more financial institutions will use ESG factors to identify good companies from many aspects. I think participating in ESG investment is helpful to obtain positive evaluations and recommendation from analytics, enhance corporate reputations, and enhance financing ability to obtain low-cost funding. It also can help to promote listed companies to have better corporate governance, contribute to high-quality economic and social development, and create a more harmonious and beautiful ecological environment. ESG is not purely charity. Its main purpose is to create long-term economic benefits and sustainable growth. The biggest features for ESG, I think, is to achieve more economic benefits as well as the environmental and social benefits, helping enterprise to achieve a balance between business value and social responsibilities. So ESG development is necessary to sustainable growth for companies. The two complements should balance each other. Business planning and strategy by identifying appropriate KPI and qualifying benefits like direct saving from energies, reduce the staff sick leave days, and improve their health and well-being could better inform the resource management. I think this is the points I would like to mention regarding your questions. Anthony?
Well, thank you, Terence. I think this would be a good answer to wrap up our session. And I would like to thank again all the panelists for spending your precious time to commit to this panel. Thank you again.